Okay, so get this right. Tiny robots.
Hmm.
Like the size of your cell phone exploring an alien ocean,
Wow.
millions of miles away, searching for life.
Really?
I know it sounds like a sci-fi movie, but this is really happening. NASA is developing these robots.
I think what's so cool is that they're actually building these robots right now.
Right. Our deep dive today is based on this article from NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory.
Oh, cool.
Could NASA's tiny robots discover life on Europa? It was published November 26, 2024, just a few days ago.
Right.
And it's all about this project called SWIM.
Swim.
Sensing with independent microswimmers. You with me so far?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, go ahead.
To really get why this is so important, you kind of have to know where these robots are going.
Okay.
Europa, one of Jupiter's moons.
Okay.
And what's fascinating about Europa is that scientists believe it has this huge ocean under its icy shell.
An ocean on another world? That's crazy.
Right.
So how would these tiny robots even get down there? I mean, they can't just, swim through the ice.
No, they can't.
Right.
So to reach that hidden ocean, they're going to use a cryobot.
Cryobot?
It's this probe that melts through the ice, like a hot knife through butter, and then releases these little robots into the ocean.
Wow. I mean, that's hard to imagine.
It is.
Once they're in the ocean, how do they move around and explore?
Well, they're not remote controlled. They're designed to work all on their own.
So they're basically making their own decisions down there.
Yeah.
Millions of miles away.
Millions of miles away.
That's both amazing and a little unnerving.
Yeah, but they kind of have to be autonomous because you can't steer a robot in real time when it takes signals over an hour to travel each way to Europa.
That's true.
Right.
Okay, so we've got these little robots swimming around an alien ocean. What are they doing down there?
Well, the main goal is to get as much information about Europa's ocean as possible.
Makes sense.
And they have some impressive technology to do this.
Like what?
Well, like this tiny sensor chip they're developing. They can measure temperature, pressure, acidity, and even the chemical makeup of the water.
All of that in one tiny chip.
Yeah, and it's only a few millimeters square.
Whoa, wait, hold on. That's like shrinking an entire oceanography lab down to the size of my fingernail. That's wild.
And what's amazing is that even though they're so small, they're also designed to talk to each other and send information back up to the surface.
Okay, so now this is where it gets interesting.
Okay.
It's not just one robot. They're talking about sending a whole swarm of these things down there.
A swarm, right?
So how does that work? Are they all doing their own thing, or are they working together?
Well, that's where the idea of swarm intelligence comes in. They're designed to work together,
Okay.
sharing data and coordinating their movements to explore efficiently. It's like a team of little robots working together to uncover the secrets of Europa's ocean.
That's incredible. It's like science fiction, but it's happening. Speaking of science fiction, didn't they test these robots in a swimming pool and make them spell out JPL underwater?
Yes.
Okay.
They've been putting them through their paces at a pool in Caltech, but this testing is really important, right?
Yeah, I imagine so.
To make sure the robots can move around how they're supposed to.
Yeah.
And then they're also doing tests in tanks at JPL to make the conditions more like what they might face on Europa.
Okay, so extreme pressure.
Yeah.
Near freezing temperatures.
Exactly.
So it sounds like this isn't just some pie-in-the-sky idea.
It's not.
It's a real project.
It's a real project. And it's not just a technological thing. It's about human ingenuity and trying to learn more, even when it seems impossible.
I can see why you find this so fascinating. But we're talking about sending robots to Europa to look for life. Shouldn't we be sure there's even a chance of finding anything there first?
That's a good point. And that's where the Europa Clipper mission comes in.
Oh, right. The spacecraft that launched in October. On its way to Europa right now. But what exactly is it going to do?
Well, think of it like an advanced scout.
Okay.
It's going to spend a few years orbiting Jupiter and doing these close flybys of Europa. And as it does these flybys, it'll gather data about Europa's composition, its surface, and most importantly, its ocean.
So it's basically laying the groundwork for a future mission that might use these swim robots.
Exactly. The data from the Clipper will be super important in figuring out if a mission to explore Europa's ocean is even possible.
This raises a good question. Why is Europa such a hot spot for scientists who are looking for life? What's so special about its ocean?
Well, one thing is that it's thought to be absolutely massive. We're talking more water than all of Earth's oceans combined.
Whoa, hold on. Why is that important? Why does the amount of water matter so much?
Well, think about it. On Earth, wherever we find water, we tend to find life. So when scientists see an ocean on another world that's bigger than all of ours put together, well, it gets them thinking.
Yeah, I can see why, but so if it's that big, does that mean it's more likely to have life than, say, a smaller body of water?
It's not just about the size,
Yeah.
it's about the potential for a long-lasting, stable environment where life could have evolved.
Okay, so size isn't everything, but it's definitely interesting. What else makes Europa's ocean special?
Well, scientists are really interested in the chemical composition of the water.
Okay.
Like, is it salty? Does it have those building blocks of life, organic molecules? And those are the kinds of questions Europa Clipper will help us answer.
And if the Clipper finds evidence that Europa's ocean could support life, then what?
Then things get really exciting.
Okay.
If the conditions seem right, a mission to send a probe, maybe even with those swim robots, could be next.
Okay, I think I'm starting to get the big picture. We've got the Clipper gathering info, and if things look good, we might send the swim team in to get up close and personal with that ocean.
Right.
But even if they don't find any aliens swimming around down there, this whole project seems really valuable.
You're right. Even if we don't find proof of life, what we learn from these missions will change how we understand ocean worlds, not just on Europa, but everywhere.
So we're not just looking for aliens, we're expanding how we think about the universe and where we fit in.
Exactly. And who knows, maybe those tiny robots will prove that we're not alone in the universe.
That would change everything, wouldn't it? It's amazing to think that those tiny robots could unlock some of the universe's biggest secrets.
And that's what makes it also captivating. We're pushing the boundaries of what's possible, going into uncharted areas, and asking huge questions about our existence. It's a journey full of wonder and excitement and, yeah, a good bit of mystery, too.
It's amazing to think about what this technology could mean. But before we get too carried away with finding aliens, let's talk more about the swim robots themselves. What makes them so unique? What kind of cool new technologies are we talking about here? This is where it gets really interesting.
It's like they're tiny submarines, but packed with technology. The combination of being so small and having such advanced capabilities is really what makes them so groundbreaking.
Give me the details. What makes them work?
You remember that sensor chip you were talking about?
Yeah, the one the size of my fingernail.
Right, the one that can measure everything?
It's pretty amazing.
It's not just about fitting a bunch of sensors in a tiny space, though. It's about choosing the right ones.
Right.
Like, they're considering optical sensors to look for light, electrochemical sensors for measuring pH and salinity, and even teeny tiny pressure sensors for figuring out how deep the ocean is.
So it's like a Swiss Army knife of sensors. Incredible. But I'm curious, how accurate can those sensors be when they're so small?
That's a great question.
Right.
Making things smaller definitely comes with its own problems.
Yeah.
One of the biggest is keeping the sensors accurate and sensitive.
Yeah.
But the engineers are coming up with some clever solutions. For example, they're using microfluidic channels to control how water flows over the sensors.
Microfluidic channels. What are those?
Imagine tiny canals on the chip.
Okay.
So small, you need a microscope to see them. And these channels guide the water over the sensors in a specific way to make sure they get a good sample and can take accurate readings.
Wow, that's incredible. We can control fluids at such a small scale.
It is.
But it's not just about the sensors, right? These things need to move around.
Right.
How do they do that?
So the article describes them as being wedge-shaped,
Okay.
kind of like a tiny triangle.
Okay.
They've got 2 propellers on the back for moving and 4 flaps for steering.
So like little self-driving submarines, that's pretty wild to think about.
It is.
But wait, if they're down there as a swarm, how do they stay in contact with each other and send data back home?
Communicating underwater, especially over long distances, is a huge challenge.
I can imagine.
Radio waves, what we use for Wi-Fi and cell phones, don't travel well through water.
Okay.
So they're looking at using sound waves. It's called underwater acoustic communication.
So like underwater sonar?
Yes. And they're developing a system that lets the robots share information with each other, coordinate their movements, and even send data back to a receiver, maybe a lander, or the cryobot itself.
Wow, so it's a network. They're all working together.
Exactly.
That's what makes them so powerful.
Right. By working together, they can explore a much bigger area, do it more efficiently, and get a more complete picture of what's going on down there.
Right.
Imagine if one robot finds something interesting, like a hydrothermal vent.
Yeah.
It can tell the others, and they can all go check it out.
That's amazing. They're like a team of robotic detectives.
Right.
But with all this talk about robots and tech, is this really the best way to look for life? Wouldn't a bigger probe be easier?
That's a good question, and scientists have been thinking about that for years.
Yeah.
There are definitely good and bad things about both approaches.
Right.
A bigger probe would be more powerful, and could have more sophisticated instruments,
Makes sense.
but it'd be way more expensive and harder to build and launch.
So it's a trade-off.
Exactly, and that's where the tiny robots are a good option. They're cheaper to make, and you can send a lot of them, which increases your chances of finding something.
Okay, yeah.
Plus, they can get into tight spaces that a bigger probe couldn't.
It's like having a whole network of telescopes instead of just one giant one.
Exactly.
So sometimes a team effort can be more effective,
Right.
especially in an environment like Europa's ocean.
Exactly, and this is all still in the very early stages.
Hmm.
The technology is changing fast. So who knows what they'll be capable of in a few years?
So the tech is impressive, but what are the chances they'll actually find life on Europa? Is it a real possibility?
Well, that's the big question, isn't it? Nobody really knows for sure, but here's what we do know. Europa has a lot of the stuff scientists think you need for life.
Okay.
It's got water, it's got energy sources like hydrothermal vents, and it might even have organic molecules,
Right.
the stuff that makes up life.
So the potential is there.
Right, but is there anything that makes scientists think Europa might be a particularly good place to look? There have been some clues. For example, the Hubble Space Telescope has seen plumes of water vapor erupting from Europa's surface.
Plumes of water coming out of the ice.
Yeah. Those plumes tell us that the ocean below is mixing with the surface, which is a good sign.
Why is that a good sign?
Well, it means that the ocean isn't just sitting there, it's active.
Right.
It could be bringing nutrients and energy up to the surface, which would make it a more hospitable place for life.
So those plumes are like a window into the ocean.
Right.
Could we collect samples from those plumes instead of drilling through the ice?
Yeah, that's something scientists are definitely looking into. In fact, there's an idea for a mission called the Europa Lander
Oh, wow.
that would land near one of those plumes and study the stuff coming out of the ocean.
That would be incredible.
It would.
But wouldn't that just be a small peek? Wouldn't we need to go into the ocean to really understand what's going on?
That's true. Plumes give us some information, but to really explore the ocean, we need to go deeper. And that's where those swim robots come in. They could let us explore this huge underwater world in ways we can't even imagine right now.
It's amazing that we might actually be able to do this.
It is.
Even if we don't find life, just exploring this alien environment will teach us so much.
Absolutely.
It's not just about finding aliens, it's about understanding our universe and where we fit in.
Exactly. And don't forget, these technologies could help us here on Earth, too.
Oh, right. How so?
Imagine swarms of these robots exploring our deepest oceans, mapping the seafloor, checking pollution levels, maybe even finding new species. There are so many possibilities.
That's incredible. So we're looking to the stars, but also using this tech to help our own planet.
Exactly. It shows how connected scientific exploration is. The search for knowledge, whether it's here or in space, can lead to unexpected discoveries that benefit everyone.
I love that. So let's talk more about the swim robots. We've talked about their mission and the potential to find life, but let's get into their design. What makes them so special?
The design is really amazing. It's all about fitting as much functionality as possible into a tiny package.
Okay, tell me more. What are some of the cool features?
Well, their wedge shape isn't just about looks. It's about being able to maneuver in the water.
Okay.
The wider front helps them push through the water, while the tapered back reduces drag so they can move quickly and turn easily.
So they're like little underwater race cars built for speed.
Right, but it's not just how they move. It's also about how they sense their environment.
Right, we talked about that sensor chip, but how do they use that data to navigate? Are we talking AI here?
They're being designed with processors and algorithms so they can make decisions on their own.
So they're not just following a program, they're learning and adapting to their surroundings in real time.
Exactly. They can spot interesting things, avoid obstacles, and even change what they're doing based on the data they collect. It's like sending a team of tiny scientists to Europa's ocean.
That's incredible. So it's not just the hardware, but the software, the brains of these robots that make them so special.
Exactly, and that's one of the coolest parts of this project. It's pushing the limits of robotics and AI.
It's mind-blowing, but I'm still trying to wrap my head around the scale of this whole thing. We're talking about an ocean millions of miles away, and these robots are tiny.
They are.
How can we be sure they'll find anything useful in such a huge place?
It's a good question and one of the biggest challenges of the mission. But remember, it's not just about finding a specific thing. It's about understanding the whole environment.
What do you mean?
Even if they don't find, like, a group of glowing fish or something, the data they gather will be incredibly useful.
Okay.
They'll map the ocean floor, measure the chemicals in the water, study the currents and temperatures. All of that helps us build a complete picture of Europa's ocean and if it could support life.
So it's about understanding the bigger picture, not just finding one specific thing.
Exactly, and that's important for future missions and figuring out if we're alone in the universe.
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense, but I still have some questions, like how do they plan to get these robots back to Earth? And what if something breaks?
Those are great questions.
Right.
And the truth is, there's still a lot of things we don't know, but that's what makes it so exciting. We're pushing the boundaries of what we can do, and we'll learn a lot along the way, even if we don't have all the answers right now.
I like that attitude. It's about the adventure of exploration.
It is.
It's like we're setting out on this big expedition, and these tiny robots are our brave explorers.
That's a great way to put it.
And speaking of exploration, there's something else about this project that I think you'll find really cool.
Oh, what's that?
It turns out these swim robots might not just be for exploring Europa's ocean.
Right.
Scientists are already thinking about how we could use them here on Earth.
Exactly.
So while we're looking at the stars, we're also helping our own planet.
Absolutely.
Wow.
Imagine them exploring the deepest parts of our oceans.
Wow.
Mapping the seafloor, checking pollution levels, maybe even finding new species. The possibilities are endless.
That's amazing. It's like we're developing this tech to look for life on another world, but we're also creating tools to help us understand and protect our own planet.
Exactly. That's one of the things that makes science so great. It's not always about finding the answers we expect. It's about the journey, the things we discover along the way, and the unexpected benefits.
I couldn't agree more. This whole deep dive has been amazing. Tiny robots, alien oceans, artificial intelligence, the search for life beyond Earth, and how all this could change how we see our own planet. It's a lot to process.
I know, it's a lot to take in, but that's what science is all about, isn't it? It challenges what we think we know, opens up new possibilities, and lets us explore the unknown.
And I can't wait to see what happens next with this project and the future of space exploration. But before we get too far ahead of ourselves, let's come back to the swim robots. We've talked a lot about them, but there's one big thing we haven't really discussed.
You're right. We've talked about their design, their capabilities, and how they might impact us.
Right.
But we haven't really talked about their main mission.
The search for life.
Exactly.
We've mentioned it, but we haven't really explored what it would mean to actually find life on Europa. What would it look like? How would we know for sure? And how would it change humanity?
Those are big questions.
And I think our listeners would be really interested to hear more about that. Okay, so, what would we actually be looking for? What kind of life could live in Europa's ocean?
That is the question, isn't it? I mean, we imagine life like we see it here, plants, animals, maybe something kind of like a fish swimming around.
Yeah.
But life on Europa, it could be totally different.
Okay, so we need to, think outside the box here.
Yeah.
But how? We don't even know what we're looking for.
Exactly. That's what makes searching for life on other planets so tough, but also so exciting. We have to think about things we haven't even imagined yet.
So give me an example. What kind of weird life could we find in Europa's ocean?
Okay, so imagine life forms that use chemical energy from those hydrothermal vents we talked about instead of sunlight.
Okay.
Or tiny organisms that can survive the crazy pressure and cold of Europa's deepest ocean.
So maybe not aliens like in the movies, but more like those extremophiles we have here on Earth.
Exactly. Extremophiles are a perfect example of how life can adapt to places we thought nothing could survive. And they make us think that life might exist in places we thought were impossible.
Okay, so we're not looking for something familiar, but how would we even know if we found it? What would be the signs of life?
Well, those sensor chips, they can measure the chemicals in the water, right? So they would be looking for specific molecules or imbalances that tell us there's some kind of biological activity going on.
So we're not looking for a creature, we're looking for the chemical traces it leaves behind.
Right, think of it like a detective at a crime scene. They're looking for evidence to tell them what happened.
That makes sense. So these robots are like tiny detectives searching for clues in Europa's ocean.
Yeah.
But what if they find something? What happens then?
That's when it gets really interesting if the data looks like there might be life. The first thing is to make sure it's real and not a mistake.
Right, yeah.
And then the real challenge begins. Figuring out what kind of life it is, how it works, and how it even evolved in such a strange place.
That would be a whole new era of science.
It really would. A huge discovery, one that would change how we understand life itself.
And it's not just about the science, is it? I mean, finding out we're not alone in the universe, that would have a huge impact on everyone.
It would definitely make us ask some big questions, How would it change our place in the universe? Would it change our values? And how would we handle contact with alien life, especially life so different from us?
Those are some heavy questions. It's almost too much to think about, but it's also pretty exciting.
It is. It's like we're on the edge of something brand new, and we have no idea what we'll find.
Yeah, and that's what drives us to explore, to discover new things, to go beyond what we thought was possible. So, like, what's the timeline here? When will we get some answers?
Well, the Europa Clipper should get to Jupiter in 2030.
Okay.
It'll spend a few years gathering information, and then we'll know a lot more about whether Europa's ocean could really support life.
So we have to wait a bit longer.
Yeah. But in the meantime, we have this incredible technology, these amazing robots that could change everything we know about life.
It's a pretty amazing time to be alive, to think we might be able to explore an alien ocean, to look for life on another world. It's incredible.
It really is.
This whole deep dive has been like a mind-blowing journey for me. It's left me feeling a sense of awe just thinking about all of this.
I get it. And if we do find life on Europa, what would that tell us about where we belong in the universe? What would we have to do differently knowing we're not alone? That's something for all of us to consider.
It's definitely something to think about, and that's what I love about these deep dives. They make us curious, they spark our imagination, and make us wonder about the big questions. So to our listeners, thanks for joining us on this incredible journey. Until next time, keep exploring, keep asking questions, and keep looking up